Morning at NTV, we are live from Kampala's Rene Conference Center. I'm Andrew Chamagiro. Now, education's changed dramatically, if I should say, with the wake of COVID-19 getting into play and undertaken remotely and on digital platforms. A lot really happened. Now, large-scale national efforts to utilize technology in support of the new wake of COVID-19 and remote e-learning, distance learning and online learning during COVID are emerging and quickly picking up. It is something we need to celebrate. Now, to help us understand what it means to the nation in the wake of COVID-19 with this education, distance education, online learning, we are having the Deputy Principal of Makerere University College of Education and External Studies, Dr. Paul Muyinda. And joining us on Zoom, we have Manuela Molondo, who happens to have a Crado, whose organization nurtures children and is now trying it online. And of course, we have Daniel on the other side, they're going to help us understand all this. Well, to start with, Doctor here. Good morning, all of you. Morning, Manuela. Morning, Daniel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, Doctor, to start with, we're having almost 15 million students in Uganda who are not at school in the wake of COVID-19. What does this mean to you as someone who is a professor with online learning?
Thank you so much for this question. 15 million Ugandans who are not in school is a very big challenge to the country. Indeed, many of us thought that COVID-19 was just going to come for 3 weeks, and then after that we would go back to school. And so we didn't bother much about exploring other alternatives to making our education institutions keep afloat.
Okay.
But it is now occurring to us that at this moment we have to find other solutions that can be able to keep our learners, our kids that at home actually engaged in learning.
Why are we slow as a nation to adopt to this new normal?
I think we are not slow. It's just that we were caught unaware. We didn't know. But increasingly I'm seeing a number of schools, a number of universities, actually a number of professors, teachers taking up this. It's just that we had another solution to actually fall back to, because we're used to the traditional approach of classroom forward teaching. So that's the mode we're used to, but we are not slow. We are taking it up now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel Massaquoi, you from the civil society, I understand you're one of those who have been strongly campaigning with the change in education. The Minister of Education, through its online portal and the TV platforms, they're giving a lot of learning materials for students who are at home. Is this a valid version of learning, and is it feasible enough?
Thank you very much. I think it's quite important to, first of all, understand the state of education and, more importantly, e-learning in the country. So I'll start off by giving you just like a and now we have about 13 million people all living in the country, and a great deal of them are concentrated in Uganda or the central region. And this region is the one that probably has the highest connectivity. However, the uptake of e-learning over time has been very low. In fact, as the first successful e-learning intervention in Kayaza High School 10 years ago, started by Mr. Ronald Dung, who's right now a principal at Kisubi. But you can quite understand that out of the 2,700 only one school that participated that were high. So while COVID has had an accelerated effect, other words, COVID has increased the uptake of learning and the foundation, and in fact, the ministry uses this as an opportunity to reflect on educational policy and find ways in which it can be used to accelerate and
Okay.
across schools all over the country. But most importantly, I should add this, we should also be cognizant of the fact that internet access is very low in the country.
Well, Daniel,
The UCC report
Daniel,
showed that
Daniel, I'll have to let you go. Your sound is a little challenging. If you could help me and fix your sound there, it's a little bit challenging, but we'll get back to you a little later and all sooner. Well, Manuela, you're one of those who have, you run a children's center called the Crado, if I'm right. Please help me understand, how has COVID-19 affected the work you do as an organization, and how has your organization reacted with the COVID-19, given that now not all parents are dropping the children and the social distancing issues?
I'm so glad to be here. Good morning, viewers. It's such an honor to be here. Your question, Chamagere, is quite interesting because I own a child care center, and a child care center is almost it's a hybrid of a nursery, school, and home care, right? And so what usually happens for us is we're not really a school, but not really not a school, yeah, because we become a school because we're a collection of children. So for us, the decision to not allow the children to close the center was purely based on the fact that we are a collection of children. And so what we did was allow parents to go home with their children, but we opened up our home-based care service. And the home-based care service just means we have our very own child carers that have been taking care of the children, go into parents' homes. But maybe a week or two into the process, private cars and public transport was closed. That meant we could no longer go into our parents' homes to take care of our children. And so now what we opted to do is to actually start e-learning for the children. And now these are children under the age of 4. This is before they actually start school. And many parents, of course, many people ask, what is it exactly that children that are not yet in school actually learning? And so we go through things like playing, because parents love their children immensely, but don't know how to play with them to enhance their development.
Indeed.
And so what we're doing right now is going into parents' homes through Zoom and through WhatsApp to actually play with children. So you'll have you will come on a typical exercise with the children. Is we come on and we are happy players. You know, we're playing football on Zoom. We're playing basketball on Zoom. We are carrying balls and taking them away. We're playing with different toys, but on Zoom, because parents don't know how to play strategically with their children to enhance their development. So right now, parents are actually learning how to play with their children. The older children do a program that prepares them for school. So they start a school preparedness program. So parents are actually now starting to understand, this is exactly how it is to help prepare our children to start school. So it's been quite the journey. It's been quite an experience, and it's quite exciting to see what's going on with the children. They miss each other, they miss friends, they're missing their friends. And so just a Zoom call of children seeing each other and saying, is that you? What toy do you have? I also have that toy.
Dear.
What does that toy do? It does X, Y, and Z. Also, my toy does this. It's quite an interesting phenomenon, what's happening with the children here at the Cradle.
Thank you so much. That is Manuela. Professor, you've heard what Manuela is saying, that they've gotten a way of adapting to the new normal and engage the parents. Where were the parents lacking in all this new dynamic, and how best can they pull up to make sure that they actually get fast closer to their children?
You see, education usually goes through a triangle, then the traditional triangle where we have the learner, we have the teachers, and then the parents.
Yes.
And indeed, the parents have been lacking in the equation in many instances. In many of our schools, the parents have been lacking. You will see that in places like Kampala, where the parents are quite involved, even the performance of kids is much better than in villages where the parents just take their children to school and they just say, okay, you stay with the teachers and so on. So COVID-19 is revealing a number of things to us that had been missing in the equation.
Okay.
First of all, it is revealing to you that it is possible to learn using technology.
Indeed.
It is also revealing to you that the role of the parent is very, very important. One time just last week, somebody was asking me, why is it that kids are not getting all these infections and the infections that we've been having so much?
Yeah.
And one person said it's because the parents are there. We look after the kids and we ensure that their health is okay, we ensure that they're learning and so on. So if we can put the same kind of emphasis in education as well, where the parent is there all the time for their child or for their children, then we shall see better children being brought up, better learning taking place, and assisted learning. So
that will be coming through.
Yeah.
All right, the World Economic Forum in its research suggested that online learning has been shown to increase retention of information and takes less time, meaning changes on coronavirus have caused, they might be here to stay, if I should say it that way. What does this mean to you who teaches students, and is it an opportunity we should grab as a nation and we take it up and we maximize it and galvanize it for the next generations?
Actually, in your earlier question, you said we were slow. I didn't want to say that we are slow, but we were supposed. Yes, we were supposed to have adopted e-learning yesterday.
Okay.
Because e-learning inherently is learner-centered. It's learner-centered. It's not teacher-centered.
Oh yeah.
Because the learner has to take on a number of activities. I am happy that the government introduced a new curriculum, which is learner-centered in Senior 1, where the learners actually take control of their own learning. Learning is in online education, on e-learning, is supposed to be activity-based, whereby teachers have to set activities and tasks for the learners to accomplish. And if the learners are accomplishing an activity, I think it's the Chinese who have a saying which says that if I do, I remember more.
Yeah.
If I read, I remember, is it 25%?
Oh yes.
Yes. So by enabling the learners to learn as they do, and the previous presenter has just told you that the learners are involved in games.
Yes.
That is participative learning. And because they are involved in games, the retention of knowledge, as you are saying, is very, very high. Because it is quite easier for them to remember the kind of activity they're involved in.
Because
the kind
they
of game.
do.
Yes, because they do. It's just like when you play football, you know all the rules, and because you are participating. But if you read about football, it becomes it becomes
complex.
Very difficult for you to be able to understand. I mean, to understand the rules of the game. But if you participate in the playing, then the rules of the game become part and parcel of you.
How do we make this much more affordable for the parents? Yes, there is technology advancement. E-learning has all gotten into play. But how do we make it affordable? What does government need to do, or other entities?
I think just as government is investing in buildings, buildings for the teachers, building for classroom and so on, the government also should invest in e-learning. Because it's the way to go. Many countries actually, people did not stop learning. They just switched seamlessly. So there is need for investment. Okay. It's not just going to happen without an investment.
So what do they need to invest in? What does exactly government need to invest in?
The most important thing is connectivity. I am happy that we do have the national fiber backbone, which has penetrated up to the last mile in districts and so on. So we need to invest in access to the technologies, access to internet. For example, probably at district levels where people can go. We should have probably centers, maybe at district levels where nearby students can go and access, those who cannot be able to access. We should reduce, for example, maybe remove or reduce taxes on educational technologies, or allow importation of education technologies for higher purchase by students and by teachers, because this is very important. If, for example, a laptop comes in at about $200, and you require students to do a hire purchase for 3 years, somebody could be paying maybe $20 maybe every month or $10 every month.
That's affordable.
And it's quite affordable. So the government can always have a solution for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manuela, as someone who is dealing a lot with the kids, do you think the online lessons you're giving, like parents playing with the kids, it's something that is working right now? Is it going to be continuous, or after COVID-19 we're going to go back to the traditional mode you're using before COVID-19?
Chamagero, that's a very good question. So what has happened is that there's been a divide. So certain parents are opting now to stay with their, especially those parents that were already at home and had ever thought of the concept of homeschooling their children and had just had an idea about it, but not pursued it. This is the one time they've had the practice, quote unquote, to do it. And those who are comfortable to do it are going to do it. The other lot cannot be told about this. They will go back to the traditional ways of learning. But here is the thing, Chamagero. You have to be equipped to be able to do homeschooling at home or to do e-learning in your home. A parent has to decide to stay home, or they have to recruit somebody who is going to come and supervise this e-learning in homes. So what that means is there is an opportunity, there's a great opportunity for more teachers to be employed through this. There's an opportunity for more children to actually go into school, because now a certain batch of children is going to go home and another batch is actually going to go back to school, and there'll be spaces, and so there's more opportunity for more children to enter schools. A study has been done in West Africa just recently, March 2020, and they were saying that in this period, more children are likely to stay home than to actually go back to the traditional methods of learning, which was quite an interesting thing to see. But the thing about West Africa's internet access is way different from what's happening here in East Africa. Just recently, we're seeing exams being done online for in Nairobi, Kenya. So the possibilities are there. There's just going to be a big divide for those who decide to go home to do e-learning, and those who decide to actually do go back to the traditional methods. However, even schools now are going to realize the advantages of e-learning. So some of them are actually going to use this as an opportunity to get more children in, but not physically in their premises. So you'll have schools now having distance learners and physical learners, which will be quite an interesting phenomenon to be able to administer the same curriculum to different sets of learners. Because I think one of the advantages of e-learning is that there's certain children who will learn better off a screen than they will in physical presence, which doesn't make sense for many of us, but our children are Gen Z. And so yes, for many of them, learning happens off a screen. So yes, some schools will decide to have e-learners. And if I decide to have my children at home, and my school, which I've been going to, can give me e-learning, and I don't have to drive every morning, and I can just get a carer to come home, or a teacher to come home, a tutor to come home. My child is not going to get flu, my child is not going to get sick, and all of those. So those are all of the reasons that many parents will decide to have their children do e-learning. However, this is just for private schools. For our government schools, however, the chances are we're going to go back to the old and traditional ways of learning. As long as our Ministry of Education and our Ministry of ICT are not talking to each other, we are bound to go back to the traditional methods. As we speak, during this time is when we should have seen our Ministry of ICT and our Ministry of Education come together on one front to communicate to Ugandans how we would, quote unquote, transition over to e-learning. So I'm very curious to know how the budget, I'm very curious for the budget reading to see how exactly Ministry of Education and Ministry of ICT plan to come together if they do, because that will determine whether or not our country will move towards e-learning or go back to the traditional ways of learning.
Thank you so much, Manuela. That is very interesting. Massaquoi, I'm going to tap into you. Right, it's very interesting. Manuela has highlighted something very remarkable there, that the Ministry of Education, this is such a trying moment to prove its weight and worth with regards to COVID-19 upgrade. What do you make of the Ministry of Education and the ICT merging of the new times vis-a-vis the old times? Daniel, you as an activist who has always been at the forefront of the fight that we can advance and digitalize our education.
Thank you very much, Chamagero. I hope I'm very loud and clear.
Yes, now your sound is better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you must really commiserate with the Ministry of Education and Sports and the Ministry of ICT. But first, I would like to lay out the big picture. Now, Uganda has about 13 million students across all levels. And specifically, our primary school has the biggest percentage, followed by secondary and higher learning. And indeed, education in Uganda has been characterized by UPE. Personally, I'm a UPE generation and USE generation, and their performance doesn't have so much to write home about. However, bringing the conversation home is you cannot have the full conversation without talking about infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I talk about internet infrastructure. The UCC reports about 15.2 million internet users and about a penetration rate of 37%. This means that most of the concentration of internet access is indeed in urban areas. And Buganda or Central Region has the highest number of students in as much as it has the highest number of internet users. Now, the Ministry of Education has had an issue with the distribution of learning materials, largely because of the deficiencies in infrastructure. If you look at the household level, households that have computers at their home are under 1%. And this is even worse in rural areas. Households that have mobile phones are very high, given that 99% of internet connectivity is via mobile phones. But still, the divide between the rural and the urban remains high. And once we disaggregate the data further, based on income levels and levels of disability, it gets even more dire. I'll give you something to look at. For the persons with disability, we have about 6 million persons with disability in Uganda and about 15% of the population. And this is consistent across different levels of education. Specifically for primary school, this is about 15.7% percentage of students who have some sort of disability. This is physical or learning or visual impairment. However, the level of use of internet devices, for example, mobile phones and smartphones, is low. And if you look at the policy intervention that we've had in the recent past, for example, the social media tax, it in fact kicked 66% of persons with disability from the internet. If you think that 200 shillings is low or $0.05 US is low, I'll give you something to think about. An average revenue per user from telecommunication services is about $3.5 US per month. This is the amount of money an average user pays for voice, for data, and SMS on Airtel or MTN or whatever. Now, social media tax is $1.5 US per month, just for data, just for social media. And this is about 43% rounding off. This shows you that the impact of some of these small things carries across different income groups, different age groups, and thereby consequently inhibiting the uptake of e-learning. But now I would like to, I can't only talk about the bad things. I will have to give it up to the government, specifically to the Rural Communication Development Fund, which is a fund administered by the Uganda Communications Commission. So they're basically extending internet access all over the country, specifically in schools all over the country, and they're equipping schools with computer labs. Even though the progress is not as high as expected, you can see that they are targeting to have 100% coverage by 2020. It will be something to consult on and see what to do. Then also, the government, through the national broadband policy, is trying to make sure that we have internet access all over the country by 2020 as well, 2022. Of course, there are targets. There are targets like 3 Mbps, which is fairly fast for videos. We're having targets like 100% coverage in urban areas and 50% coverage in rural areas. And you can see there is some sort of progress. But one point that I cannot emphasize enough is the need for interdependence, the need for communication, the need of harmonization of policies. Of commitment across the board. And this is from not only the Ministry of Education, but also the Ministry of ICT, which has showed again that the internet is not only important for communication or for activism or for chatting and sending selfies, but important for all other factors. Maybe I can conclude on this not so good point. So there is a 2017 report authored by the World Bank, and it's all about global learning. And I found these two nuggets quite interesting. So there is an insight about teacher absenteeism in Uganda. Uganda has the highest level of primary school teacher absenteeism in sub-Saharan Africa. That's something to think about. Secondly, Uganda has the highest level of students in primary school who cannot do basic subtraction of 2 digits. Now, this emphasizes the importance of teachers. Teachers, whether we want it or not, are the most important element of learning, are the most important element of education. And as long as teachers are not facilitators, as long as teachers do not have the skills, I mean, e-learning is not necessarily about me sitting here and the teacher sitting there and I participate passively. E-learning is about active participation on either side, the teacher's end and the student's end. And indeed, e-learning has another element called blended learning, which I feel is more important. And blended learning basically is about the use of technologies in different aspects of education. So look at it from different ways. So we have school management, for example, who manages the payrolls, who manages the roll calls. Then you look at the digital content or digital libraries. How accessible is this content? Can this content be put on offline servers? Can it be put on hardware devices that can be transported to remote areas? You have to look at it in terms of, are there programs that enable students or enable teachers to learn and so that they can transfer the learning and the knowledge? And I mean, I cannot forbear to give it to Gayaza High School. In 2010, Mr. Ronald Dungu, who was then the principal of Gayaza and currently is a principal at St. Mary's College, Chisubi, started an initiative for e-learning and e-tutoring. Basically, e-learning for the students and e-tutoring for the teachers. And indeed, this was picked up by Microsoft under its learning program and MTN briefly in 2013, and it was supported. So you can see something was started in 2010. And even if you visit Gayaza e-learning website right now, you would see that in the last couple of months, there's been tremendous amount of content, tremendous amount of learning.
Thank you so much.
This shows that crises like COVID improve those who are already prepared, and they kill those who are not. So for me, this is an opportunity. I mean, it might look all dire, but this is an opportunity to sit back and use this as a way of reimagining education policy, regardless of the socio-economic standings, which is a conversation for another day, but then also merging this or aligning this to the ICT policy. And I mean, we have so many policies that I can't list right now.
I'll stick to the ICT policy, Massaquoi, because exactly that's what we need to engage. Manuela, there are a couple of things. Thank you so much, Daniel. Daniel has hinted on a couple of things. One is the internet around the country. The government has a policy that it needs this internet to spread entirely around the nation by the end of 2020. Kampala were given Wi-Fi, but it works from 3 a.m. in the night, in the morning, and it ends at 6:45 in the morning. I don't know why it works only very early in the morning. So we still have those glitches here and there. But Manuela, I would like to engage you on something you hinted about, the tutoring, reskilling the teachers and the use of gadgets. Because now when you talk about e-learning, all I think, I'm going to buy a gadget for my son, and I tell him Mandela City, and you just start to follow these prompts and all that. Where does it go beyond that, as someone who is dealing with children and you have parents who can afford these gadgets, but again, the extra input? Can we have a little bit of dive in that?
I mean, Daniel is right. There's a big thought process on teachers being equipped. Mm-hmm. You know, I was looking at the material. Just allow me to digress a bit. I was looking at the material from the Ministry of Education for the children's learning. And some of the things that the ministry stated was that the way that the format of the information was going to be experiential, allowing learners to use their environment to learn. And I found it quite interesting until I started to look at the material, and I was still finding information in, for example, the history papers or the history, what they're going to learn in history was really purely the stuff that we learned while we were in school, 1880, information.
I didn't know you that old, 1880.
There's one thing to have policies, and there's another for what's actually going on, what's going down on ground. Okay. So yes, we can say, teachers need to be equipped, and so schools, learning institutions need to have, institutions teaching teachers need to be equipped with, teaching teachers the basic digital skills. And we can say that forever, and if the curriculum for the teachers stays the same, and the children's curriculum stays the same, that's not going to happen. So it's actually going to be on the onus of the schools to train their teachers. Okay. The advantage of digital or e-learning is it's possible, it's easy, it can happen. The thing about it is we don't have to go through this entire process of teaching teachers how to code. No, give them the basic Zoom skills, give them the basic making a video and posting the video, give them the basic, how can we have a learning platform where a teacher can, a parent can come in, see the units, pick the unit 1, unit 2, unit 3. Even Facebook right now has introduced social learning. So you can actually teach children, on Facebook. Like it's now possible. You can actually upload your content. You can I'm currently running an entire course module on Facebook. So yes, even right now I can teach English, I can teach science, I can teach chemistry if I get all the children onto Facebook, which many might have access to or not. But especially for the urban areas that Daniel talked about, yes, they'll have access to Facebook. So yes, there's a big component of training teachers, but it need not be extreme. It need not be complicated. It doesn't need to be, because when it gets complicated, then it won't happen. But you can teach the basics. We
Manuela,
can teach a basic Zoom call. There's so many people that had no idea how to use Zoom, but now they
understand.
Can use Zoom.
Manuela, before I let you go, before I let you go, let's talk a bit about the gadgets, because parents think once I buy the gadgets, that's all. What more comes with a gadget?
So actually for a parent, it's the gadget and the interactions with the child. Nice. That's what's important. So like I said earlier, it will require many parents to recruit tutors to come into their homes, to be with their children, to guide their learning. Because for many of us, we have house girls at home who, if the internet connection went off, wouldn't have any idea what to do with the Zoom call or with whatever learning platform that the school is using. So it not only means that we have to maybe have tutors come home, but also our children need to be trained on some of these things. So if I have bought a router at home, me as a parent, I need to teach my child what happens if the network goes off. What do you do? Switch it on, switch it back on. This is how we buy data. This is how we load the router. This is how we connect. This is the password, so that then all the children can be able to continue their learning on their own. But for the younger ones, they will require more interaction. In terms of the devices, e-learning has various forms of learning. Even receiving an email and downloading a document is a form of e-learning. Let's not forget that. Getting a document off WhatsApp is actually a form of e-learning. So yes, it is possible. But again, like we've said with Daniel, this can only happen in central region, places that have access to the internet. For rural, what's going on in the rural areas, that's going to be close to impossible. Again, if even just sending information during this COVID period happened with physical paper, not emails to RDCs, not WhatsApp, no, but physical documents had to be delivered to RDCs, LCs, to now deliver over to the headmasters in the different districts. It's like it's a big Chinese whisper that's just waiting to go wrong. So again, the two ministries need to find synergies. Like Daniel said, need to find synergies, need to work together to make this happen. They can't work separate of each other. So if we're talking about devices, the ministry has to, accord schools devices, accord parents devices. They can buy via hire purchase. They can purchase. You get free. The other day we're launching mobile phones that we had exported over to Egypt. Why aren't we doing that here in Uganda and giving these devices to our people? So I think it's a case of all of us getting engaged, involved, making this happen.
Thank you so much, Manuela Molondo. Thank you so much, Daniel Massaquoi. It has been very, very gratifying to have you this morning. I'll have to let you go, and I can now engage the professor here, but thank you so much for your input. So a couple of things I've captured from these two. One is the material upgrade. You understand that Manuela is saying that when she tried to look at the content that was being delivered, the material that was delivered, it was the material she learned when she was still in school. There is no any upgrade. There is no any advancement. How do we get there?
Yeah, that comes with what we call instructional design of the materials. Of course, you must have a purpose for which you are designing the materials. So if the history of Europe in 1818 is supposed to help us in achieving something, then the material is still relevant. Because what the
Canadian trellis?
Yeah, if it is if it's important that it's going to help Ugandans or achieve certain things, and maybe what we look at is the learning outcome. What kind of learning outcome do you want to have your learners achieve? That's the starting point. And the starting point of learning outcome, of course, you have to look at the context. The context where you are, like Uganda, for example. What are our challenges as Uganda? What are our challenges? For example, if it relates to geography, we are seeing a rising lake, for example. Why should we teach, for example, the Netherlands and the Rhinelands and the waters? Maybe we can bring
Saskatchewan
yes, maybe we can bring in the teaching of the Rhinelands or the Netherlands in trying to see how they controlled the water, which was getting
to put it to the context.
Yeah, to put it in the context of Uganda. So if we want people who can be able to control, to live with that water and so on, then the content must be related to that. Yes, it must be related to that. So the content must be actually relevant to the learners. And that's why setting of intended learning outcomes before you design the content is very, very important. It's not that you just say write content because you want students to have content. No, it should be aimed at achieving a given goal, achieving a given learning goal, achieving a given learning target. So are we hitting the targets as Uganda, or we are hitting the wrong things?
You as a professor on e-learning, especially with regards to children and education, what are we missing as a nation? There was an attempt by the Uganda Christian University, if I remember well, that had to administer exam online, and it was resisted at the national level. Like, this can't happen. The president even bashed it in one of his address. From your reading, has the moods towards the e-learning changed?
I think the most important thing is that we need to take a step. There is no way we are going to hide our heads in the sand when our whole body is outside.
Is left out, yeah.
Uganda is living in the global world. There is no way we are going to run away from the benefits or the use of e-learning, because all the countries are going e-learning. We can't hide. Even Uganda here, all the sectors are going e. All the sectors are going e. It is only education which is insisting to remain. But the insistence of remaining in the Iron Age or in the Stone Age is not going to help us produce learners that are going to work in the fourth industrial revolution. Remember, we are producing learners for the fourth industrial revolution. But if we are using methods that are of the Stone Age, methods of the Iron Age, the Steel Age, it means that our workers or our students will remain actually needed by the Iron Age, which is actually long gone. This fourth industrial revolution, they won't benefit from it because they won't have
the skill set.
They won't have the skill set, and no wonder the level of unemployment in our country is actually too high, just simply because of the methods we use to teach our students.
I hear you.
That is it.
Let's look at this issue of research. Do you think we have a gap in research as a nation with regards to innovation? And are we lacking with investment in research on such innovation that can amplify these innovation that can benefit our children or the nation with regards to e-learning?
I think scholars are doing a lot of research. They are doing a lot of research, but the disconnect we have is how we get this research onto the application bit of it, into informing policy. That's the missing link. For example, in Massaquoi University, as back as 2005, for example, we had done research on mobile learning, and we had developed a number of frameworks for mobile learning. But how to get these frameworks onto the application bit is what is lacking, because the application side actually is not connecting very well with the universities. So the universities that are doing research, they are doing a lot of research. There's a lot of research in Massaquoi University on all aspects of life that you can ever imagine. I am happy that, for example, the Kira EV.
Yes, we have now two buses.
Yes, we did research and government took it over. And that is an example to tell you that if government takes over our research, something very important can come out. Yeah.
The merger between ICT and the Minister of Education, how big can it propel this entire wave?
It is very, very important. That is very, very important. The merger between the Minister of Education and Minister of ICT, because the Minister of Education is supposed to be at the forefront of pedagogy, how to use technology for learning. And then the Minister of ICT is supposed to be there to give us the technology.
The support structure.
The support structure, the connectivity, the internet, the infrastructure, the servers, and so all those things. But for us as education, we want to see what are the affordances of each of the technologies that the Minister of ICT is giving us in terms of getting our students to learn. You see?
The affordability.
Yes, the affordance of that technology. Because we are talking about, for example, Daniela was talking about games, how they're using games. WhatsApp has come and she's talking about Zoom and how to, but she's fishing out the gaming aspects of Zoom.
Yes, when it's not meetings.
Yes, the gaming aspect of Zoom, to be able to teach learners through games. So the Minister of Education would be able to provide us with a Zoom. But then the Minister of Education will be able to tell us how do you use Zoom to teach. So that is the link that is needed between the Minister of ICT and the Minister of Education.
Wow.
Very, very important.
Well, there you have it. It is such a great conversation. Thank you so much, Doctor. We have had a great conversation with regards to education, e-learning. It's something that we all need to know. We have had, of course, Dr. Paul Muyinda, an e-learning professor. We had Manuela and we had Daniel Massaquoi. And thank you so much for being a part of this